Julie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to finally get to talk to you.
Yes, likewise. Likewise. The famous nurse Julie from TikTok. We have her in our presence. Very exciting. Julie, how long have you been sober?
I've been sober for a little over 7 years. I'll have 8 years, a day at a time, February 4th.
Awesome.
So in
Awesome.
a couple months, yeah.
Will you take us through a little bit about where you grew up and what your childhood was like, if you had any traumas or notable things that happened there?
Yeah. So I grew up in a rural part of Pennsylvania, Erie, Pennsylvania. And I would say my childhood was pretty idyllic. I had like two brothers and sisters. I was the youngest. My family was very loving. I had many cousins and aunts and uncles and like very like 1980s, like just outside running around barefoot and like playing, playing and being fun. Um, the only thing I can like when I think about me being a child, I was really, really anxious and probably a little obsessive compulsive without like knowing that that's what that was. Even
Right.
as like a
Right.
little girl, 5, 6 years old. I remember it mostly starting once I started like preschool and kindergarten and first grade, where I would be really obsessively worried about if I was going to get enough sleep. So
Hmm.
like weird things like getting enough sleep, like someone must have told me I was supposed to get 8 hours. I can remember being a really little girl and like counting down the time. Like if I went to bed at 8 o'clock and got up at this time, is that enough sleep? And what if I can't fall asleep? And I'm telling you this because I was really, really plagued by that for like most of my childhood. I could not
Yeah.
relax. I would be like sick to my stomach leaving school, thinking about like, how's the night going to go? And am I going to get everything done I need to get done and go to sleep on time so I get enough sleep? And of course, my parents, who are loving and caring as best as they can be, didn't understand what was happening, tried to support me. Um, but something about that really shaped who I was as an adult. And really, that obsessive stuff did not stop. And I also called it homesickness. So a lot of it had to do with like being away from home as well. I would feel homesick. Really, I think it was like I was having panic attacks, but I didn't know. I was like super little, so I didn't know what that was.
Yeah.
So my parents were like, "Oh, you were just homesick," because I'd have to come home from friends' houses a lot.
Mm.
I couldn't like travel or do things because I would get homesick. And that really shaped who I was all through grade school and then into high school. And it only stopped in high school because around 14, you start experimenting with, at least I did. Around 13, I started experimenting with alcohol. And I realized when I drank, it would go away.
Mm-hmm.
So that slowly was my first, alcohol was the first way of me managing how I was feeling. And it really was beneficial for a long time. It helped me not have that obsessive compulsive anxiety that I was so used to growing up as a little girl for whatever reason.
One of the ways that I describe addiction for people who, like, what is it? What's happening is like this is a combination of OCD and free floating anxiety, and that they just latch on to things. And then it's OCD with that thing. And that alcohol, basically exactly what you described, where as a little kid, we don't know why we're having anxiety about the things we're having. And of course, our parents are telling us it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You're overreacting. Ashley, you're wound so tight. That was when I heard.
Yes.
And what's really going on is we have this underlying mental health struggle going on that's developing. And we find that alcohol works really well for that until it doesn't.
Yes, exactly. My parents, like, that's what I mean by like, my parents did the best they could, but the kind of like internal messaging that I received was something is wrong with me innately something is wrong with me. And I didn't know how to relax. Like it was just like, I couldn't relax. You can never relax. Just relax. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be like, yeah, I would love to. Please, can someone help me relax? And then you turn into a teenager and of course, like I didn't realize at 13 when I like drank for the first time and like felt that release. I wasn't like, it's all in hindsight.
Right.
But like in hindsight, looking back, I can see why I looked for that so often because I finally could relax.
Yeah. Yeah. It's huge. What did it look like from there? Was it one of those things where it became, an everyday thing quickly, or how did your addiction progress?
I think it was, one, genetically, just on a side note, genetically, neither one of my parents, I'd say, would call themselves alcoholics or addicts to a point. But like, like I grew up with like several aunts and uncles, all alcoholics. That word was like tossed around a lot. And I heard it a lot growing up. My grandpa was an alcoholic. My grandma was an alcoholic. My grandpa died of alcoholism. My uncles don't drink because they're alcoholics. Like, so this word alcoholic was, talked about a lot.
Yeah.
But it wasn't nothing in recovery was talked about. It was just like my idea of what an alcoholic was shaped at a young age as well. Like my grandpa who had 9 kids and like lost the farm and was like abusive. Like that's what alcoholics are. Right. And so I was the youngest of 3. So both my brother and sister were older and very cool in my mind. And they were drinking and stuff as well. And I knew that just because I could like hear them talking to their friends and I knew what they were doing. So when I started as a young girl, just being fun and like stealing beers and stealing vodka from our parents and stuff, that's how it started. But it quickly progressed all through high school into just this like party theme. Like I was very interested in like being cool, being the life of the party, wanting to be where the older kids were, wanting to know what was happening. I had no fear. I talk about someone who was like so fearful, right? I was so scared as a little girl about everything.
Yeah.
And then I turned into this like wild child who would like do anything, try anything, go anywhere, with alcohol. Bro, it was like, if I could drink, I could do anything is what it felt like.
Yeah.
I could sleep anywhere. I could ride in the car with anyone. And I never was scared about talking to older guys. At the time, it just felt like I'm a party girl. This is my identity. This is what I identify with. And this is the only thing that matters. Looking back, it's very clear to me that I was using drugs and alcohol to be who I needed to be, to like live in the world and be okay. That was not clear at the time, but that is definitely what it was like. And I was more of like a weekend warrior kind of girl. Like I definitely still did my stuff. But like the only thing that mattered on the weekends was what's everyone doing? Where's the party at? And how do I get there?
Like the kind of like, I just want to be with my friends,
Yeah. And I think during the week I would like smoke weed and stuff, but it wasn't like, I definitely was still like high functioning.
You got your shit done.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It sounds like it went on like this for a long time. Like you were able to be somewhat functional. When did the idea start to pop into your head? Okay, so maybe, just maybe there's something going on here.
I always knew that there was something going on. Even when I was in high school, I always knew there was something going on. Like always. Okay. And I've always been, I quit drinking and using drugs at 33. I never was not functioning. I was always functioning, even in college. So I'd say like the craziest time when I would be like the more classic alcoholic drug addict, when people would think, I was still going to school. I was still doing the things I needed to do. And I was an active, heroin user daily. I was dope sick. I still was like doing shit I needed to do. Right. So like, even then and I still had a job. I still was working. Like, I don't know how I did it, honestly, but and I think that's how I kept the facade up. It was like, I could still do all these things and a daily heroin user. And I had I kind of made my life so it was like everyone around me was doing this too. Like everyone was actively using drugs, and college was like my worst, I guess, when I knew for sure I was an addict because I was getting dope sick if I didn't snort heroin every day. Yeah. I never shot anything, but I was snorting things daily, and I would get dope sick if I wasn't. and I was going to like creepier and creepier places to like get the
Yep.
things I needed to get. And like my friends who were
Were you
doing it
like,
with
this is just
me.
college?
Yes, exactly. I was like, this is what everyone's doing. It's just college. And then
Yeah.
even my college friends were like, girl. Because one time I had a friend, one of my very best friends, who was also doing the same thing as I was doing, as far as drugs and alcohol related, but I didn't have a pill to snort that day, and she did, and she was just sort of sitting on hers because somehow she could. And I asked her if I could have it, and she said no. And then I went to go steal it, and she caught me and was like, "What the fuck? You know, like what are you doing?" And I like that's when, I mean, of course, like I kind of knew there was always issues because like I was functional enough to know that like normal people didn't snort heroin or pills every day to function.
Right.
But once I was caught where I was going to steal something from my best friend because like I couldn't not have it.
Yeah.
And she was like, girl, you're going too far. Like, this is too much. So even my friends who were like doing the same thing I was doing started being like, this is not okay. Like you are having problems here. And at that time in college, I did stop. So I was doing like pills, like oxys was a big thing back then.
Yep.
So oxys, and I would do heroin if I couldn't get oxys because it was cheaper, but it was scarier because you didn't know what you were getting. You didn't know like the kind of batch you would get. I don't know. Can we talk about it like this? Like openly?
Yeah.
Like I just remember, you know, like you would think you could take this much, but then the next batch you would get, if you took that much, you could like turn blue and stop breathing. So it was so much scarier than just knowing exactly what kind of milligram of Oxycontin you could take. During that period in college, I did know I had a very big problem because I was getting dope sick. I had friends coming up to me being like, you're out of control. This is really scary. Like you're going to die. And I did kind of have an intervention where I was able to, on my own, stop doing pills because pills were like the big thing at the time. My big problem, I thought.
Yeah.
And I did that by drinking more. I remember finding gin for the first time, gin as like a 21-year-old, and realizing that if I drank enough gin, it felt the same as if I just blew a whole oxy. And I was like, okay, this is how I'll get off of this stuff. I'll drink gin to get off of this really hard stuff. Like,
and
so now like
because no one else wants it.
No one else wants it. And like, talk about like the insanity of like how this sounds. Of course I'm a drug addict. Of course I'm an alcoholic. But at the time it was like very normal to me. It was like,
totally.
I just need to drink a bunch of gin every day for 5 days while I'm dope sick. And then I'll be off oxys and then I can just move on with my life. Right. And luckily enough, and I could really go on and on. There's tons of little tiny details in here. I met this guy who I used to work with. He was an older gentleman. He helped me see that I was addicted to drugs. Like, so there's a bunch of like little details that really helped me get to where I was. But I actually did stop doing hard drugs. And by hard drugs, I mean heroin, because I didn't stop doing cocaine or anything. But like the one thing that I was like really hooked on that really had its like claws in me was that. And once I stopped doing that, I was like, oh, I'm good. I'm good. I can still drink. I can still do Coke every weekend because Coke was just to keep me drinking more. Like I wanted to drink all day and night. So if I did Coke, I could. And I never really craved Coke, which is true. I never really did. Because I was always a downers girl. I'm already kind of sped up. I don't need cocaine. I'm already fucking wound up. So then once I quit drugs, I use like quotations because like I was still doing tons of drugs. Quit a drug that I thought was the problem. Then I rode that pony till the saddle came off. I'm making up my own thing now. But like I rode that from like 21 to 33. I just like drank a shit ton and like did Coke when I wanted to so I could drink more. And like I lived my whole life like that. I went to nursing school like that. I was a functioning nurse. I just met the friends I needed to meet. Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Like in nursing school, I know nursing school is gnarly. And then like being a nurse, is it other people are like nurses are heavy drinkers? Like what did it look like for you? You know, and I'm thinking also in terms of other nurses who are listening who may be like, well,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I mean, what it looked like was like I could keep the wheels on. Like I would make it to class. It was my second degree, so I had my first degree in psychology, by the way, and I used to work in a mental health hospital as a behavioral tech, and I would snort coke and pills in the bathroom and then
Yes.
go run groups.
Yes, you
Run
did.
groups.
Yes, and they were great groups.
And they were great groups, right? It's like,
We're
oh
getting
my
well.
God. Like, yeah. So
Yeah.
just so you know, I mean, that was like the kind of life I was living. So like, yeah, I was doing it, but like, I don't know if I was doing it well.
Right.
And then I went to nursing school, and nursing school was really intense. If I wasn't drinking, so I was never really a daily drinker until the very end. But it was like, what would keep me going is like the fact that I knew I could eventually drink, I guess.
Okay.
And because I didn't think I was an alcoholic, I really didn't. I didn't actually think I was an alcoholic. I really thought I was like a normal human being who liked to drink. And I always knew there was a problem in the sense of like, I didn't want to be that girl. I didn't want to be the girl that like loved to drink so much and my only hobby was going out.
Right. Okay.
I didn't want to be her. So that was a problem in my head. Like when I say I always knew there was a problem, it was like, I wish I could want to do something else. And like, I just didn't.
Yeah.
And I thought, but eventually one day I will. I always thought one day I will want to do something else besides heavily drink. No, that day never came. I just kept wanting to drink more and more. But in nursing school, it was like, if I wasn't drinking, I was taking Xanax because that would help me relax, right? Or I would drink at night enough to relax so I could like go to sleep so I can go to sleep. So I would still get my shit done because not only was I like my alcoholism manifests in many ways. And one of those ways is overachieving. Like I'm never enough. Nothing's ever enough. I have to prove to everybody that I'm enough. So how else am I going to do that? I'm going to be a huge striver. And so much so that like I'll put aside everything I've ever felt or needed to make sure that I did the thing I said I would do so you would love me. You know? So I also had that thing driving me while I was doing that. But on the weekends, it was like I was 27 or no, I don't know. I don't know how old I was, 25 maybe. And I was peeing the bed everywhere I went. It was like a joke. You know, I was peeing the bed everywhere. I was blacking out all the time. I was a total mess. And it was funny. It was funny to me. Like it wasn't a problem. I was still in nursing school. I was still getting my shit done. I was getting A's. And to me, this was just who I was. And I was with other people who loved me and who were also kind of like that. And it was like, not a problem. I didn't drink and drive. Thank God. I let other people drive me around drunk.
Right.
And I wouldn't drink and drive though. My parents would always come pick me up or I'd call a taxi. I was always really smart about that. So I wasn't getting in trouble. But I would still end up, you know, in random guy's house, like naked and afraid. And like, God, I literally remember like calling my friend at like 6:30 in the morning at a guy's house who I knew where I was at. He was like an ex-boyfriend or something, but I was like, so-and-so's not here. I'm naked. My clothes are soaking wet. The bed's soaking wet. It's off of the bed frame. Their sheets are torn off. Can you please come pick me up? Like, I don't know what happened, but I got to get out of here.
It's like a blackout escape room, right? You wake up from the blackout and it's like, okay, here are the clues. It's you and your alcoholism. You're stuck in a room and you have to find the clues to get out. And what happened?
Like, do you still have your phone? Do you have your wallet? Look at your face. Are your teeth there?
Look at your face.
Because I've definitely woken up and my teeth weren't there. They were smashed out because I apparently face planted on cobblestone.
Oh, that's,
And that is what I mean by like, and I still thought it was funny. These teeth right here, baby, they're fake.
And you
teeth.
woke up from the blackout and they were
Boom.
gone, or you were at the hospital?
No, I remember that one. I do remember that one, but I didn't know how bad it was. And I remember taking a picture of my teeth and my face because I was like so drunk. It was like, you couldn't like think through to like just look in the mirror. I was like, I didn't know what was happening.
Like the hangover, like, holy shit.
And I took a picture and I sent it to my sister and I said, how bad is it? And she called me and was like, 'cause she was in California at the time and I was on the East Coast. So it was late. It was earlier for her. And she was like, can you just go to sleep? And I remember being like, yep. And she was like, go to sleep and deal with this in the morning. And I was like, okay, clunk, and like hung up the phone, went right to bed. And I fixed it that morning. And then I fixed it that morning and I thought it was hilarious. Again, do you know what I mean? Like I mean,
it is a little hilarious.
It is a little hilarious.
Just
and
like long-term, not hilarious.
Yeah, long-term, not hilarious. Yeah, so how did it, I mean, it looked a lot like that, but it was like, and then I'd still get up and like go to work on Monday, and like be okay and like do the thing and like.
And be good at it.
Yeah, and be good at it and I wasn't stealing like narcotics and stuff from work, thank God. Like I didn't go there. And for a long time, I rode that idea that like, well, I quit hard drugs years ago. Like that's your hard drug phase. Like I quit those a long time ago. Like I'm okay.
Right. I mean, which is not true also because you quit one hard drug.
One hard drug. Yeah. Not all illegal drugs. Yeah, I was still doing illegal drugs.
Yeah.
Every weekend.
But I do think that nursing is an incredibly intense profession. Nursing school is incredibly intense. Being an actual nurse is incredibly intense. And it seems like nurses who are drinking a lot as coping find the other nurses who are drinking a lot as coping. And that's kind of part of the culture is there's so much trauma that it's almost easier, quote, air quotes, easier to drink and just move through it because it's compounding trauma.
I couldn't agree more. Like 100%, especially when I was working in the ICU. I never went to the ICU. I never worked hungover, which was amazing. Like, that's what I mean. Like, I still like respected, I still respected what I did. And I was afraid. Like it was too much for me to be there hungover. Could not have done it. Like I've definitely had, and again, like I'm not saying everyone I know, I still have very close friends who are not sober and they're awesome and amazing. And I love them. And they've gone to work a couple of times hungover. I just knew I couldn't do it. So like, if I was working the next day, I would not drink, but I wouldn't go out. I mean, that's the thing is like, I was either like drinking and going out and doing what I want to do and like being and drinking how I want to drink or isolating. There was like no in between. I wasn't like kind of going out. Like, no, it's like, if I can't go out and like get fucking blackout, I'm not going out at all. Right. So when I was working and that was it because, but the second I was off, like, and I knew I wasn't coming back, it was on because I was either drinking for relief, or like dead inside because I had shut it off because it's so hard. It's so hard, especially for me in the ICU, like to hurry up and especially with my personality, it was like constant hurry, just constant rush, a constant rush to do shit. And I don't know how I lasted as long as I did because with my personality, like that's not good. I hate that feeling of being rushed. I'm already like that anyway. Even when there's not things to rush around for, I'm already like wound up and like ready to go.
I would think that would match your personality because you're already in a rush. That's interesting that it didn't go well.
No, it was like, it would like make it worse and worse and worse because you couldn't do it all. Right. But like me wanting to be able to do it all and the exact time it should be done, like it kind of fed that beast in a good way, but also like it made it worse because most days you can't actually do it the way you think it should be done because there's just not the time and shit happens and stuff happens and you have to be able to easily and flexibly change route, change course. And like, I'm rigid as fuck. like Like I'm like black and white, rigid as hell. Like I'm not flexible. I can't do this. Right.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
you
I'm
just thought you
learning.
were doing this.
Yes. I'm learning. I've learned in sobriety how to be that way a little easier. But like I think that's why I loved the release of alcohol.
Yeah.
It could allow me to be like just relax. Because so yeah, and then when I wasn't nursing, it was on.
Why do you think nurses in particular are the receiving end of so much trauma in these high intensity healthcare situations? You see more nurses take on more struggles than a lot of the other physicians, and there's just, it seems like the nurses in particular are absorbing so much of this. Why do you think that is?
So it's hard for me to say. I really wouldn't say that the nurses. I think everyone that's on that unit, at least in my experience, the CNAs, the respiratory therapists, the nurses, the doctors, we're all kind of in it together. I think the nurses are kind of taking the brunt of the work, I think, and really with the patient those 12 hours that you're there. So that could be it. You feel
FaceTime.
almost like the most responsibility or something because you're the one who's really there. You're the one who's really having to explain everything, watch everything. So for me, the things that really stick out is the suffering. There's immense suffering that goes on. And you have to not totally acknowledge it or you will crumble and die is what it feels like. Like you can't go there. You can't go to, it's like, I couldn't imagine thank God I was a hospice nurse during COVID. Like I could not have imagined what the nurses went through during COVID. Like the trauma of how much suffering was going on and how many people were dying right before their eyes alone. And they had to be the last ones to be there with them while they were taking their last breath, while they were probably saying shit like help me and just like insane stuff, or having let their families FaceTime them while they take their last breath, like the shit like that. And then you have to move on and go to your next patient. Like you cannot sit in that. You cannot, because you have to detach or you can't do your job. But you don't actually ever fully detach is the thing, is like you think you're detached. You think it doesn't matter. You think it doesn't affect you. That's what I mean. Like when I was an ICU nurse, I had so much compassion fatigue and detachment because I had to. Because you have to keep moving. You have to go into work the next day and still be a nurse for different patients. Like, and it's just, yeah, you end up, you feel like you're kind of dead inside and you can make jokes about it and you're super desensitized. You totally are. But at the end of the day, like it leaks out, at least for me, it leaks out some ways. Like it's affecting you somehow, whether we care to admit that or not.
What do you think the healthier healthcare workers or nurses are doing in order to process that amount of trauma on a daily basis? Have you seen it? What does that look like?
Well, for me, I don't think, okay, so this is just me, right? Me.
Okay.
So personally, I think it's almost impossible to, do it unless you are working for a unionized hospital that respects their nurses and gives them a break, right? So you get like 15-minute breaks, 2 15-minute breaks, a 30-minute or an hour lunch where there's an actual nurse covering for you so you can take breaks. You have to work for an institution, which there are very few and far between, that really respect their healthcare workers and really give them the breaks and the quality of a shift that they deserve. So fair nursing ratios and a nurse actually covering you when you take your, I see the difference because I've worked for unionized hospitals where nurses are unionized and I've worked for non, and the non is like, there's no way you can respect yourself, not have compassion fatigue, still take care of yourself. Like it's impossible. You can't do it because the hospital doesn't allow you to do that. Like and if you did, you'd probably be fired because you would insist on, you have to have really good boundaries. You would insist on taking the full breaks that you actually deserve to get away, breathe, take time for yourself, and just take a break. You need to. I mean, that's not, and you need to be able to fully shut down and take enough breaks throughout the week, right? Like not working a million hours. Our healthcare system is not built to preserve someone who's working in it. It's just not. And the only way I've seen it be able to be done is if you work for a good, and not all unions are good, but a good union that really gives you breaks, good nursing ratios, hospitals that give you, X amount of weeks vacation and paid time, and you actually take them. So not many nurses, or not many people are good with boundaries anyway. But the only way I've ever made nursing be able to work for me is working per diem. So you can work per diem at a large enough institution where they need you all the time. So you can work a lot if you want to, and you can take away a lot of time if you want to. And that is the only way I've learned how to do it. And I love my job now. But the max I'll work is 40 hours. So I work 8-hour shifts. So I think anyone working over 40 hours as a nurse is insane. Like no one should work more than 40 hours. We should all work like 32. Maybe, take a lot of breaks. But I realize that's a really privileged thing to be saying. Like I'm a single woman who doesn't have children. Like I live in California, so our wages are much bigger. Like, so I can afford to do those things, right? And this is before social media. So like, I don't even mean with social media money too.
Yeah.
I could live that way. And I realize not everyone can, but I think that for me, that's the only way I could do it is by really having super strong boundaries with the people I work for and my patients. Like trusting that when I leave, I fully trust that other nurses can do just as good of a job as I can do. And that like the only way I can be a really good nurse is if I truly care for myself first. And I really do that. And for the most part, that helps me. But I do think you'll get a lot of heat. You'll be called not a team player, right? Because I'm not staying later. I refuse. Like I will refuse to do things because I fucking matter. And that not everyone's doing that. So when no one else is doing that and you're the selfish one.
Yep.
And really what it takes is some balls to do it anyway. And that's what I do. And then people start following suit.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sticking to my freaking grounds. I know I'm a good ass nurse. I know what's right. And I'm sorry we've all been brainwashed by our leadership that like we should self-sacrifice. No. Sorry. I'm not. Oh my God, I could go on and on and on.
But you did, and I think it's important to mention that you did self-sacrifice. You did go that route. You did that for many, many years, and it got you in a really dark place. So it's
a good point. Yeah. I learned to do it because of what I've been through. Right.
Right. So you had to make a life or death decision, right? And we'll get into that, like what that looked like getting sober, but you had to make a life or death decision because you weren't going to long-term be a nurse at all if you weren't, if you were drinking yourself to death. So there's that. And I think, people are not going to put you first if you don't put you first. It just isn't the way that the world works. Unfortunately, I wish it were, because it would be easier for all of us to implement our boundaries. But I think it's important to note you did put them first. You did try all of that. And the trajectory for it was, drunk and dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did it look like to finally at 33 say, because you were so functional and you were achieving and getting, all of your needs were being met, right? You were numbing out, you were achieving, you were still had your job, you could still show everyone, you were still the fun, like all these things, your needs were getting met. So
Yeah.
when did alcohol like really turn on you?
Yeah. So I moved to California as a geographical, like my life was kind of falling apart in Baltimore, Maryland. Not really because of alcohol, or maybe it was, I don't know. But like my relationship wasn't working. Anyway, I moved to California and I was going to like change, right? I was purposely not going to, I remember thinking, I can't keep drinking like this. I need to do something else. When I moved to California, I'm living with my sister. She doesn't really drink. I'm not going to make other nursing friends that drink. Like, I'm going to change. I'm going to be different.
How old were you?
And well, I was 29.
When you moved.
3 years. Yeah. So I still had 3 more years,
Okay.
which is where which I'll get to because I got weird, right?
Yeah.
Because that's when I didn't have these party friends, right?
Okay.
Who, by the way, I love my party friends. I really want to say that because they're still I have a lot of friends who are sober who say like they don't hang out with people they used to be with, but I still do. They're my closest friends. And they grew out of it and I never did. Did. Anyway, so I wasn't going to party. I wasn't going to find party friends. I was going to do this different thing. And, I got a different type of job. I started becoming a hospice nurse. And what I found was now hospice nursing, you can go to work hungover. That's what I found. Like I started, I know. I talk about never being hungover until I was like not an ICU nurse. And then I was I'm driving in my car. No one knows I'm hungover. Right. I'm going into patient's house, talking a little bit, leaving. Like I can be hungover for this. Sweet. Mm-hmm. Like now I'm drinking during the week. Now I'm drinking weekdays.
Alone?
Yes, alone because I wasn't going to make friends that were drinking. Right. So that's okay. Now I'm going to just drink casually at my house. At noon. I'm just going to drink wine. And then one bottle wasn't enough. And then I would drink 2 bottles a night. And then I would be embarrassed that I drank 2 bottles. Then I started hiding bottles, like doing all the things I hear people talk about who like had a problem. I was like, and I had one day when I was so hungover at work that I ended up I was driving to a patient's house and I was so hungover and I couldn't pull over because I was like kind of not on a highway, but on a busy road where like I couldn't pull over. So I ended up throwing up, just full throw up in my car. No bag, nothing, just vomiting everywhere. Couldn't do anything about it because I was driving. And then getting to my patient's house and being like, oh my God, like what the fuck? And I had already called out that week. Like I was like calling out all the time. Like it was just a mess. So I just put on chapstick and like walked into this house. Like I didn't just vomit everywhere. Was like throwing up
the vomit on you?
No, because I had like threw up. It was like all over my car, which is the gross part. I had like leaned over and like threw up all over the inside of my car.
Okay.
And then I went to a patient's house and acted like a normal person, kind of, probably not. Left, like threw up at other patients' houses, like in their, like it was just one of those things where I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like this is supposed to be, like okay. Yes. So long story long, it just got weirder and weirder to a place where, I was like, I can't keep doing this. Like this is like, oh, I don't know what's happening. I still wasn't calling myself an alcoholic. I'm going to try to speed it up because it was like a thing. So it gets weirder and weirder. Now I'm hiding alcohol from my sister. I didn't want her to know how much I was drinking. I couldn't work was everything was the problem. Like, but I had changed it all. I had moved to a different state. I had changed the kind of job I was saying was making me so miserable. Now I'm a different kind of nurse. I didn't make friends that drank. Didn't have friends at all, really. And the friends I did have they didn't drink like me. So every time we would go to dinner or go out, I would leave because they would be nursing a drink the whole, like they'd be casually drinking and I would get one drink in me and it's like on. Like I can't, you guys are boring and you're not drinking enough. You're not drinking fast enough. And it's really, it was like burning. Like it was like I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand just kind of drinking. Yep. So I would leave my group of friends and go home and get a bottle of wine and drink like I wanted to drink. And I didn't even know I was doing that. Like it took me a while to like even understand like what I was doing. And then I remember feeling so relieved that I finally was home and I could like chug wine like I needed to. And that would just happen over and over and over again until finally one day it's a long story, but I was in an acting school too. So I was doing all these hobbies too. And like still nothing was like sticking. And I wasn't like doing the hobbies as good as I wanted to because I kept drinking at night and I wasn't doing the writing I wanted to and like all these different things. So I was in this acting school and I confessed to this acting group that I thought I had a drinking problem. And the teacher was like, "Do you think you're an alcoholic?" And I was like, "No, I'm not an alcoholic. I just drink too much. It's getting in the way of like my life. I want to have other hobbies. You know, I'm 33. I'm too old. Like I'm not an alcoholic. I know what an alcoholic is. I'm not that." Because I wasn't like a farmer who like lost the farm and like abused my kids.
Right.
I'm like, it's just when I drink, I can't stop. There's like something that happens in me that when I drink, like something switches and I can't stop. And my teacher was like, "Honey, that's an alcoholic. You don't need to like lose everything to like be an alcoholic. If you drink and something changes in you chemically and you can't stop, like that's what alcoholism is." And I remember for the first time, like a light kind of going on and being like, it is, but still not really fully embracing it. And then I stopped. So I stopped drinking because I had told these people in this group that I saw twice a week that I wasn't going to drink anymore. And I was, I wasn't saying I was an alcoholic, but I was like, I'm not going to drink. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to like write all the things I want to write. I'm going to be the best performer. I'm going to be the best nurse, all this stuff. And for 11 months, I did not drink. 11 months. I got no help.
Oof.
I did not drink.
Yikes.
And that is the worst possible. That is when I hit my bottom. I had never been so sick in my life. I have never felt pain and agony like I did in those 11 months. I have never been truly suicidal until those 11 months where I was like, this is it. I would rather die. I would rather die. I cannot not drink because the devastating part was I did the thing. I did it. That's what I thought. I did the thing. I stopped drinking after all these years. I never thought I could not drink. And then I did it. And nothing changed. Except I got worse.
Right.
I remember the first week. Yeah. The first week I remember waking up every single night with the drinking dream and craving cheesecake at 7 a.m. And I was not a sweets girl. So it was like super weird. I would have insane alcohol cravings, like where I felt like I could tear my skin off because I wanted to chug. I remember thinking I want to chug warm vodka more than I ever have in my life because all I want to do is feel that burn. I want to feel it. And I remember thinking like, that's weird. Why am I feeling like this? That's so weird. I didn't know how much I needed alcohol. And then just like slowly over those months, I was like more isolating. I didn't do any of the things. I got like sicker and sicker and sicker, way more anxious, couldn't leave the house. Just so unbelievably sick in my mind. And finally there was a jumping off point where I was like, well, I guess I'm going to quit. I guess I'm going to start drinking again. I'm either going to start drinking again or I'm going to die because I can't live like this. There's no way I can fucking live like this. And it still never dawned on me like, maybe you need help. I actually was like, I think I should die. That's really what I thought. I was like, I think I should just die. This is not, there's no other solution. But I knew I couldn't, I knew it was like drinking again, like was the downfall. Like you can't fucking drink again. You definitely can't be drinking. But then to not be drinking was so much worse that it was like, what the fuck is really wrong with me? And then I was in the grocery store and a girl that I had done improv with, that I didn't even know her name, but I recognized her. She knew my name and she was like, Julie, what's going on? How are you? Blah, 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 blah. We should go. I'm like, we should do something. That's what she's saying. We should do something, blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking like, oh my God, I'm going to die because I can't do anything because I'm like dying inside. But I went on a hike with her that weekend. And for some reason, I like poured my heart out to her and like told her everything that was going on. And she was like, girl, you sound like an alcoholic. And I was like, what? And even then I was like, no, I'm not an alcoholic. And she was like, no, my mom's an alcoholic. She's been in AA for years. I've been in Al-Anon for years. You are a dry alcoholic. You are dry. You need AA. You need to get help. And even though I didn't believe her and I was like actually totally offended and I was like, this bitch who doesn't know me at all, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I was so, cause at the time I really believed, I don't know why, I just could not wrap my head around I was an alcoholic. I was just like, no, I just don't know. I don't know why, but I just didn't think I was. And I really didn't want to get help. Like AA was like, yeah, fucking right. But I was so desperate. Yep. I was so desperate. And this girl was like, I'll take you to your first meeting. Like true Al-Anon.
Yeah. Right. Oh, that's good.
I know. So good. And she did. She took me to my first meeting that Saturday or like maybe a couple days later. I can't remember, but we went and nothing happened. I was scared shitless. I was a big meeting. I just like I just sat in the back, like didn't say a word, didn't talk to anyone, didn't even hear anything. I didn't listen to anyone. Like I didn't do anything. But something about that opened the window to the next day where for some reason I was willing by myself. I looked up a meeting and there was a meeting like 3 blocks from my house. And I can remember what I was wearing. I remember how it felt. It was cold outside. I was almost to a year sober, dry, without getting any help. And I had my hands in my pockets, my head down, and I was like so fucking scared. And I went to this meeting. It was a smaller meeting. And I listened, and then they whatever, we were going to share or something. And I remember my hand was like flying up and like hysterically crying. I could cry right now thinking about it because I was just like hysterical. Just, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm not an alcoholic. Again, I'm not an alcoholic, but I haven't been drinking and I'm so miserable. I'm so scared. I feel like I'm going to die. I feel like I'm going to die. I'm so scared. I don't know what's wrong with me. I just need help. Blah, 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 blah. And of course, like everyone there like laughed because they knew exactly what was wrong with me. They were like, you're in the fucking right spot. You're an alcoholic, you idiot. They didn't say that, but they were just like,
Yeah, everybody.
Yeah. And then everyone like shared after I shared. I can't remember like if I shared first or last or what happened, but like you ask for help in an AA meeting and you share honestly, people are going to help you. So like afterwards, like everyone came up to me and was like, you sound just like me. I was just like this. It's okay. Like you don't have to admit anything. Just go to your next meeting. Here's our numbers. Whatever, like there's a women's meeting on Saturday, meet me there, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, okay. Cause I was so so distraught.
Desperate. Yeah.
And I went to the next meeting and then I got my first sponsor who was a hard ass and really took this serious. And I was not taking it serious because I was like still not convinced I was an alcoholic, but she helped me so much because even though I didn't think it was as serious as she was making it, like she was being like, to drink is to die. And I was like, that's not how it is for me. I could drink tomorrow and I'd be okay. And then she's like, then why don't you? Why aren't you drinking then? I remember reading about being like restless, irritable, and discontent and like learning about like alcoholism and like what kind of goes along with that. And like just listening at meetings and like really learning and hearing my story over and over and over again. And like learning about, just being like restless, irritable, and discontent, and how AA as a whole kind of helps you be happy, joyous, and free. And it's just all I ever wanted, right? And my first sponsor in the very beginning guaranteed me. She was like, I guarantee you can be happy, joyous, and free. You can get the promises that the big book says if you do every single thing that I say. You have to do every single thing I say. I guarantee you it will work. And I was just so desperate. And I was like sobbing in her car. I'm like, I'll do anything. Because I was so fucking out of my mind.
Yep.
And all I've ever wanted was freedom, the feeling of freedom, like that alcohol gave me, you know, and it did. So I just started doing everything she said. I went to 4 meetings a week. I had commitments. So I got sober through AA. People haven't noticed. Again, that's not everyone's story, but that's how I got sober and how I got free and how I recovered, you know, and how I continued to recover. And so I went to like about 4 meetings a week. I had commitments. I had to call 3 different women in the program every day, not including her. And then I had to call her. And again, this is not like what everyone had to do, right? But doing those things, even though they felt very much like, what the fuck? This is insane. But through that, I would feel relief. I would get relief like I was drinking a bottle of wine. Like I had to go to meetings. I had to share honestly. And every time I would do that, I would connect with other people and I would get that relief. I would walk into meetings wound up and feeling like I wanted to drink. And I would leave there like I could breathe again. Like I just drank a bottle of wine. Like I got that relief I needed, the heaviness off my chest. And then, of course, the steps help. And then I got a new sponsor because this first sponsor was like, I eventually kind of didn't need the the aggressiveness, right? Because I wanted to be there eventually. Yeah. And I was calling myself an alcoholic and I was like in it. You know, like once it started working, I was like, I'm in. Like, I don't care if this is not right or not. Like, this is making me feel better and giving me everything I've ever wanted. And I'm in. So then I got a different sponsor and worked the steps with her. And now, you know, it's just a daily reprieve. It's like that first couple years, because I was dry for 11 months. So like, I counted that time as sober time, but like, I was like a newcomer coming in, you know, my first birthday, I was like totally new. Yeah. So that first couple of years was just like really understanding alcoholism and really understanding what I was like working with and how to use AA in my everyday life to be happy, joyous, and free, and to really have that freedom that I've always been craving. And AA on a daily basis now is like, that's like my life, you know, that's my life. It's getting harder and harder because all of the things that we learn in there, which is like, you get this really big life and, but you know, like you don't get sober to like not live. Right. You know, right. I am sober to help other alcoholics and to live my life. Like that's the point. So I can be free from not only drugs and alcohol, but like by the way I think, by my thinking that can weigh me down sometimes. And it's one of my greatest gifts. I'm like forever grateful that I got sober and I found AA.
It's so, I love that you put 11 months together and you wanted to die because what it is, particularly in this storytelling format of talking to people about alcoholism, it gives this reminder to me and also this really clear illustration that alcohol is a symptom of the problem. And until it is arrested, until it stops, you can't actually work on the problem, right? So that's where the stopping drinking comes into play, is that in order to do the work, you have to stop drinking. However, if you stop drinking and you don't do the work, you just took the medicine away. Yes. And so things can get worse. And what people often, when I talk to parents or when I talk to people about their loved one, they say, well, I just want them to stop drinking. And I'm like, well, why are you offering them anything? Are you offering them services, resources, you know, anything in replace of that thing? Well, no. Yeah. Then how can you take that from them? How can you, because there's just a lack of understanding. We can get worse. We can want to die in sobriety, and sobriety and recovery are an active participation in the in getting better. It's in the problem, the ism, the I, self, me is all in our minds. It's a mental health struggle, and you can't outrun that.
You're right. Like in the third step prayer where it says, relieve me of the bondage of self.
Right.
Like that is like all I ever wanted was like to get relief from me, from my mind, from my head. And like, and if alcohol and drugs can't do it anymore, because eventually it stops working, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever, right? Like I need something else. Like I need something else. And for me, that something else was the program of AA and connecting to others, getting outside of myself, helping other people, sharing how I'm feeling. Like one of the most profound things I remember a few weeks into really being in AA, I walked up to a meeting and someone asked me how I was. And I go, oh, I'm okay. I'm fine. I didn't even think about it. I go, yeah, I'm good. How are you? And they go, oh, I'm kind of depressed and anxious today. I don't know. It's just been like a rough week. I just feel like really anxious. I'm glad I'm here. And I was like, my jaw was on the floor. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, me too. I feel like shit. But I didn't say that to you. I just said, oh, I'm good. And I really believed it. Like I wasn't even in touch with like what was actually happening with me. And then to have someone else like mirror and be honest and truthful helped me be like, oh, yeah, me too. I actually had a rough week. I'm like not feeling that great either. I'm really glad I'm here too. And then they like hug me and they're like, me too. You know, it's just like being able to connect with somebody in an honest way. Like, I think so few of us do that. I mean, I think in general, the world needs more community. At least for, I mean, I am so resistant after 7 years of really knowing what helps me. I still don't want to do it. I still have to force myself most of the time. And it's like, and I even know. And I just think we're so resistant. You know, I think about like grief and different things that really people really struggle with. People heal and get better in community, and maybe not even better in the sense of like forever get better, but in the moment, in community, in groups, in support groups. And it's just so, people are so resistant. They're like, the second I say that to any of my hospice patients, me too. Yeah, I know. Whenever they're like, do you have any resources? And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's this great support group. You instantly see them be like, no, I'm not doing that. Yeah.
Well, no. As if that they're going to make it worse.
Yeah.
But people's experience so often is related to the people that they have historically chosen to surround themselves with. And they are choosing them from a very sick place, right? So when we go to meetings, we are choosing the meeting, like in most meetings, and this is just speaking for 12-step, there is an array of people that are at different stages in the process. And so you're not just choosing what you've always chosen. Some of it is out of your control. And, you know, obviously some of it is in your control and there are sicker meetings than others. But if a lot of time people have a bad taste in their mouth about community or groups or any kind of support that way because of support they've either been given automatically from their families or that they've chosen. And you have to remember that this is being chosen for you in a different way. And so you're going to get something different from it. And, you know, the people who I think I heard in your stories, and I similarly, I mean, I really felt like if this is what the solution to my discomfort is, I'm screwed. Like, this is terrible. This is the worst news ever. Like, admitting I was an alcoholic or anything, you know, that was one level of bad. But now I have to go to AA meetings. Are you kidding? Like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. Haha.
Yes.
And, you know, and then you keep going and then you get something out of it. And I laugh now when I think about like what I was like, the suffering that you and I describe, and then the small amount that showing up for an hour takes, and how painful that, like, you know, we're dying. You're losing your front teeth. Like, it's the wheels are fucking coming off, and we're like, an hour? of a meet, like
every day. I remember thinking like that's impossible. And I actually didn't do it every day. I mean, I started to once it started feeling good, but like, to think about when people say like 90 and 90, which I didn't do, by the way, but it's like 90 meetings in 90 days. Are you kidding me? Like,
it's now you're like, okay, yeah, I'll climb Mount Everest too. It's as if, getting your teeth fixed and going back to work after, like our ideas of like what's difficult are really skewed. And I think that's an important thing is like, if it feels really difficult or if this feels like a huge lift, but you can lay out all these other things that are super crazy in your life. Like if you're the person, this is definitely me. And I have a feeling it's you too, where like you're in a normal group of people and they're telling funny stories about things that have happened to them. And you start to tell a funny story about something that's happened to you in your life and everybody stops laughing and is like, like concerned for you. And you're like, no, it's funny. Like this, no, it's funny. Like this was okay. I've lost the group. And like if those are your experiences and then you're like, worried about going to, these meetings or finding whatever kind of community, it's part of the bondage of self. It's part of how we keep ourselves and it's part of how the disease keeps us isolated.
Yeah. And like, I think, there has to be a willingness. There has to be a willingness and like, you can't make someone get there, I think too, like, if I didn't have those 11 months dry where I was like so miserable, that's what it took. Like that is what it took for me to be willing to ask for help and get help. And there's been so many times where, think about the times when like I lost my teeth or like I woke up and I peed my bed for like the millionth time or, I was hungover for the millionth time or my friend overdosed, like just insane things where like I'm dope sick in a basement and like, but I think I'm this like normal person. Like that didn't get me sober. I don't know, it took what it took. I don't know. Like, and all of a sudden, being sober, being 11 months without drugs and alcohol is what it took for me to see what I was dealing with. Yeah. And it was like, holy shit.
Calls are coming from inside
die.
The house.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. It's me. I need help. I need help.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's intense.
It's intense.
How are you? Do nurses often reach out to you or do you find yourself talking to nurses about drinking and any of these topics in your kind of public work?
Well, it's attraction rather than promotion. So I try not to ever really talk, like of course in the public world where like I'm on TikTok and I'm teaching people about death and dying. I do some videos about recovery. Just because people always ask me like how I stay so sane or how am I this way or that way? Right. How do I do my job? And like, it's like, I can't not talk about it. Like I can live my life because I'm sober and I have a program that I work that helps me be well inside and medication. Side note. So like, which I only could get to being sober and being in a program. Like I never could have been able to do the things. Because medication did not work for me while I was drinking and using. And then when I was sober and working a program, it was like night and freaking day when I started medications. It was like, holy shit, this is what I've needed my whole life.
You don't realize how disabled you are too. Yes. You're like, oh, is this what everyone else has experienced? Well, no wonder they're doing better than I am.
Yes.
Shit.
Yes, I remember and I had been sober for 3 years working a steady program, and my sponsor was the one who was like, have you thought about talking to a psychiatrist and talking about like getting some help? And me being like, I can't, like, no, I don't need it. I'm just going to meditate more. She's like, girl, I talk to you every day. Like, just go talk to someone. And honestly, and then I got on medication and probably 2 weeks later, I was like, I can see clearly now the rain is gone. It was like, oh my
Right.
God. Like, and I could only get there. I could only get there the way I got there. Right. But
Yeah. You got to sort
anyway,
through
so
what's what.
yeah, it's exactly. But yeah, so that's why I so openly share publicly about what I've gone through, because it's such a huge part of my life. But
Yeah.
on a daily basis, people ask for help in meetings and stuff, and of course I do. And there's definitely a nursing population there needing help, and I reach out when I can. And if people want the help, I will gladly be a part of that. It's just like, but I'm very big on like attraction rather than promotion. I don't go after people. I don't like push anyone to do anything. I just sort of try to live my life, and hopefully people like what they see. And if they want help, they can ask.
How has teaching people about death and dying changed your life?
Well, it's given me, man, it's changed my life, like physically, in the sense of like what I physically do on a day-to-day basis. Like I never imagined so many people would be interested in learning the things I have to say, or anyone in this industry, in this world, they could also do this. Not what I have to say, just like what I've learned. And so it's changed my life in the sense of I can't believe so many people want to learn about it, and now I can do this somewhat as a living. That has changed. So that changed my life. And it's really given me a lot of confidence, a lot of purpose. I really, really love it. I really, really mean what I say, and I love what I do. And I love what I do as a hospice nurse, and I love what I do as a death and dying educator. Like I love it. And it's truly been like one of these crazy things of like a life beyond my wildest dreams. Like it's continuing to unfold. I didn't ever feel like I had to hustle or like make it happen or do this or do that to get what I want. Like there was none of that. It was just like this natural thing that just happened. And I really work hard at trying to keep that, because I think that's how it happened, is I didn't really try. It was just sort of like naturally unfolded. And so it's been really amazing.
Why isn't death and dying, or teaching about death and dying, a horribly sad, traumatic topic?
Yeah, I think I had to be an ICU nurse for many years to understand that. So like I was an ICU nurse for many years. That was traumatic. I saw so much suffering. I saw so much lack of being able to talk about what was truly happening with these patients. I felt like as healthcare workers, a lot of us knew what was going on. We knew that not everyone in the ICU is going to die. Not at all. But like many people are. And we as healthcare workers did a disservice at the time when I was there, a lot of times, by not fully and really communicating that with families about their loved ones who were usually sedated and going to die. Or if they didn't die, they were going to die eventually, because they were already there for a terminal illness that no one's really talking about. Right. And it was like,
okay.
So that was traumatic. That was really hard. That felt really bad and sad to me. So to be able to do the opposite of that, and that's what I feel like the hospice is, it is like a true blessing and honor. It does not feel sad at all. It's like we're all going to die. Unfortunately, that's where we're at right now. And if you know you're going to, because of a specific disease you have and what's going on with your body, there's a really good way to do it. And there's a really good team that knows how to treat your symptoms, educate you, prepare you. It's not like foolproof, and it's not perfect, and like a lot of things can go wrong, and like it can be sad and depressing sometimes. But for the majority of the time, people you're taking care of are super thankful, super great. Not that they need to be, but they are, and it feels really good to get that immediate feedback of like, wow, you've really helped me. Wow, no one's been able to talk to me about this. I feel so much better now. Like when you're not afraid of it and you're able to talk to somebody openly and directly and really give them like a map of what it's probably going to look like, because we see this day in and day out, and specific diseases look a certain way almost all the time. And when you're not afraid to like explain that and tell them all the things and how you're going to help and what to expect and what's normal, what's not, people are freaking thankful. And it feels so good to feel like you're really helping somebody. And And I feel like that on a day-to-day basis. I feel like that. I feel like I'm really freaking helping people, and it feels really good. And you have time. I work for a unionized company, again, with the unions. So they give me the amount of patients I can actually see in a day, where I can spend the time and talk to them and care for them the way they should be cared for. And it's amazing. And it makes all the difference. So,
Has it
yeah.
changed your outlook on spirituality?
I've kind of always been really spiritual, even as a little girl. I feel like I've just had this connection to something. I've always, always, always felt that, even as a little girl before I knew what I was feeling. So the only thing that's really changed is I believe our bodies are so miraculous, and I'm totally for science. So I'm not like, oh, natural. Like, I believe in science and all the everything. Do all the things that our Western world like can give us if you want to. But it's also amazing to watch how a dying body really knows how to die and really takes care of us. It shuts down mechanisms to make you not thirsty. It shuts down mechanisms to make you not hungry. Your calcium levels go up, so you sleep all the time. Like, it does all of these things naturally without doing anything to help you die well. So spiritually, that made me be like, wow, that's amazing. And to see people going through it, and to see people, there's end of life visionings that happen for so many people, where they see dead loved ones, dead relatives, dead pets, like coming to get them, giving them comforting messages. And
you're watching this?
Yeah, you watch it. You see it all the time. It's like it's like so commonplace. It's not even surprising. It's like something I try to educate my families on. So when they do start seeing it, they're not like giving their loved one medications because they're delusional or something. Right. So it's like, it's just so beautiful. And like, end of life is truly like, I know the feeling. I get this certain feeling that feels like God, right? Or whatever you want to call it, a higher presence, something where I just feel this overwhelming feeling of like peace and love and joy. And it's amazing. And I can feel it many different ways throughout my life. And one of the ways I feel it is watching someone die. Not that that's not. So I go around. Yeah. Anyway, have a good day. See you later. When as a hospice nurse, I'm not killing anyone. They're naturally dying. This is what's going to happen. I happen to be there. Incidentally, they're not dying for any reason why I'm there. I just have, but when I do witness this, people think it's so sad, right? Like, oh, it must be so sad to watch someone die. Right. And there is sadness, obviously. Like, it's sad because I see their loved ones feeling sad, and it can be sad, but mostly because my grief is removed, because I'm not the one losing my mom or someone, right?
Right.
I can just feel the presence of what I would call, and of course, I'm not saying this to families because everyone believes everything different. I'm not, but in my experience, I feel this feeling of what I would call a higher power or God. It's like when you watch a baby be born, how you're like, holy shit, here's a baby and now it's crying and it wasn't here before. Now it's here. And like, whoa,
you had that in you?
Yeah. Like, that's wild. Like, it's so hard not to be overcome with emotions watching that happen. And that is the exact feeling I have when I see someone die. That it feels like that when it's not traumatic. Like, I've been in events where we're giving CPR and we're doing all this shit. It doesn't feel like that. I mean, when someone knows they're going to die, it's happening naturally.
Yes.
Everyone's ready for this.
Care.
Yeah. Hospital. It feels like that. It feels like, wow, I just witnessed a miracle. I just witnessed the most beautiful thing. And it's like, I feel like angels are like, it's just, without being too spiritual, because I understand that not everyone believes that, right? And I know, so like, it's beyond belief for me. It's like a feeling. It's like a feeling of like, wow, this is life. This is what it's all about. Whatever this feeling is.
For this person.
Yeah, for the finale. And it's the most beautiful thing I could ever witness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an important topic. It's not one that we talk about enough. And it's, I heard someone say like, it's the most natural thing all of us will experience in our lives. And yet we don't talk about it. We're afraid to talk about it. We don't know how to talk about it. No one's ever taught us to. I mean, I do my best with my kids, and we have had lost pets, so we've had to talk about it, but it's, I try to answer the questions they're asking, but I have to admit that I feel I don't know what to say. I don't know how to say, I don't know. I sort of find myself going with kind of canned things I've heard
Yeah.
because I, don't want to say, I have no idea. Things
Yeah.
like,
Uh-huh.
I don't want to do that. And so, I mean, my kids have the conversations we've had, and I find myself, it's like we were talking about something extremely natural, and I have none of those feelings when we talk about birth or any of the
Mm-hmm.
questions they have. But when we talk about, and I think I'm afraid of, and I think this is, I say this because I think it's normal that we're afraid of those feelings,
Yeah.
right? We're not afraid of the joy necessarily, usually of the joy of bringing a life into the world. But when we talk about death, we're afraid of, I know for me, I'm afraid, am I going to scare my kids? Now that they know I'm going to die. Okay. Are they going to be afraid they're going to die? Are they going
Yeah.
to be afraid? And what it is avoidance, right? It's like,
Yes.
it's societal avoidance. And
Yep.
if we have, you're teaching us how to talk about that and making it less scary, I think is awesome and such an important piece. And it's a really cool part of sobriety too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like this spiritual thing, and it's all about turning something that feels so scary into something that's actually joyful and can be experienced as joy, when most people can't imagine, when you go into an AA meeting and you're like, people say, I'm a grateful alcoholic and my name is, so-and-so. And you're like, you're grateful? You
Yeah.
remember the first times hearing
Yeah.
this,
It's the
people are like,
first
you
time
gotta be
hearing it.
kidding me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you're doing that. Like, I'm grateful that I get to bear witness to death and to the conclusion, the finale, and it gets us thinking about things differently.
Yeah. It's one of the greatest. I always say, like, the people who are willing to like learn about it and like, because I think the first step in acceptance, like, well, how do I get to acceptance that I'm going to die, right, is even just acknowledging, like, not avoiding it, like
Yeah.
acknowledging that it's actually going to happen, saying things like, I'm afraid, I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to die, I'm afraid to die. Like, any patients that I hear
Okay.
saying that, I'm always like, that's it. That's the only thing. Like, you don't have to overcome that. It's like, all
Okay.
you have to do is say it. There's something about the saying it that
Yeah.
like takes the resistance out of it and makes it just a little easier. And you're a little closer to this idea of acknowledging that it's going to happen. And it's so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable for them. It's so uncomfortable for their loved ones, really uncomfortable for the loved ones to hear them say that. Right.
Oof.
And all I ever say is like, it makes me want to cry that I get to witness people showing up for their loved one dying and being in this super uncomfortable position of like watching them do it and having to like sit there and be witness to that and doing it anyway. And doing it
Mm-hmm.
anyway is like the
Mm-hmm.
greatest act of love that anyone can give to someone. And I don't think they'll regret it. It's like, if you can just do it. If it's like, I get so like, I just want people to know that, because I've seen the difference. There's families that refuse all of it, just everything, and it's like such a hectic, awful, traumatizing moment. And there's
Yeah.
families that don't, and they just they kind of like allow it and show up anyway, and it turns
Yep.
into this like honor, like a beautiful moment. It's still
Yeah.
super sad, but it's like a
Yeah.
beautiful moment that they all honored each other. And it's the
Yeah.
most beautiful thing you get to witness if you're a hospice nurse. And that's,
Yeah.
again, why my job's not depressing. It's amazing.
That makes total sense to me. I mean, when people ask me about my job, and I mean, people would talk about interventions, like, how could you do that? That's got to be so. And I'm like, it is the best thing. I love doing interventions. I love the shift and the
Yeah.
discomfort and all the things we're breaking that didn't work in the first place. But for everyone else, it's horrifically uncomfortable. Like, they've never been so uncomfortable in their life. And I'm like, this is fantastic. Look at what we're doing.
Yes,
So that
exactly.
makes a lot of sense to me. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for being here. And my dad wanted me to tell you he is the one who found you, and he's been watching you for, I guess, over a year now, and loves your content. So
No
that's
way.
yes,
I didn't
yes.
know
So
that. That's so
yep,
awesome.
he's the one who found you and loves your content, talking about all this stuff. So that's good. Hopefully we'll have more of those. Hopefully that'll rub off on all of us in our
Yes.
family.
What's your dad's name? Is that okay? Can I ask your dad's name?
Absolutely. Peter Loeb.
Peter Loeb. Peter Loeb. Hello,
Loeb.
Peter. Hello, Peter. Thank you.
Yes. So where can people find you on TikTok?
So people can find me on all social media platforms, wherever you get yours.
Wherever you get yours.
Yeah,
Wherever
TikTok,
it comes in.
Facebook, Instagram, YouTube at Hospice Nurse Julie.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. So grateful that you're speaking out as a nurse and as a woman in recovery. So thank you so much.
Thank you for all
you
do. Thank you for all you do. It's been great.
Awesome. Thank you.